You picture a caveman right now. Go ahead, actually picture him. Wild matted hair down to his shoulders. A beard tangled with twigs and dirt. Someone who hasn't seen a comb in his entire life because combs don't exist yet. That image is in almost every movie, every cartoon, every textbook illustration you've ever seen. And it's wrong. Not slightly wrong. Backwards. The archaeological record tells a completely different story. One where ancient humans were grooming, trimming, and shaping their hair tens of thousands of years before anyone invented a razor, and the evidence has been sitting in museum collections the whole time, waiting for someone to actually look at it. Start with the tools because this is where the myth falls apart immediately. Archaeologists working sites around Lake Turkana in Kenya have recovered stone tools dating back roughly 3.3 million years. Edges napped sharp enough to cut through hide, meat, and yes, hair. By the late Stone Age, tens of thousands of years ago, toolmaking had advanced dramatically. Cambridge archaeologist Margarita Gleba has pointed out that a well-worked piece of flint, or better yet obsidian, holds an edge sharp enough to rival a modern blade. These weren't crude rocks. A skilled hand could produce something functionally close to a straight razor out of volcanic glass. And the idea that people possessing this level of tool sophistication simply never thought to use it on their own hair doesn't hold up once you actually look at what these tools were capable of. Now look at what's been found on people, not just near them. Some of the earliest suggested evidence for intentional hair removal dates to around 30,000 years ago, and researchers have pointed to more than just cutting tools. Archaeologists have identified what may have functioned as matched pairs of clamshells, precise enough to pluck individual hairs, alongside sharpened flint edges used the way you'd use a disposable razor today. This isn't a single, one-off find, either. Similar evidence turns up across multiple sites, suggesting an established practice rather than one unusually fastidious individual working alone 30,000 years ago. Then there's Ötzi, and Ötzi is the piece of evidence that should end this debate entirely. Discovered frozen in the Alps and dated to roughly 5,300 years ago, Ötzi's body was preserved well enough that researchers could examine his actual hair condition directly instead of guessing from tools alone. According to analysis from the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology, Ötzi had dark, medium-length hair and what was likely a beard, but crucially, it was kept at a manageable, maintained length rather than left wild and unchecked for years at a time. This is a person who lived over 5,000 years ago, whose actual preserved remains show deliberate hair maintenance, not the tangled mass the caveman stereotype insists on. So why does the wild-haired myth persist so stubbornly if the evidence points the other way? Part of it comes down to what actually survives underground for tens of thousands of years. Anthropologist Judith Berman has noted directly that we simply don't have preserved hairstyles, skin, or clothing from most of this period. Hair decomposes, skin decomposes, and mostly only bone and stone last. Assuming ancient people had wild, unkempt hair because we don't have a perfectly preserved ponytail from 40,000 years ago is, in Berman's own words, conjecture not grounded in the data. The absence of surviving hair isn't evidence of absence of grooming. It's just an absence of the one material least likely to survive that long buried in dirt. There's also a much more practical reason to suspect ancient people kept their hair trimmed rather than long and loose, and it has nothing to do with vanity. Long, unkempt hair creates real, specific survival problems. It gets tangled in dense brush during a hunt at exactly the wrong moment. It can be grabbed by an opponent during a physical confrontation. A vulnerability serious enough that historians note Alexander the Great later required his soldiers to shave for precisely this reason, so enemies in close combat had nothing to grab onto. It obscures peripheral vision at exactly the moments when spotting an approaching predator matters most. None of these are modern concerns. Every one of them existed just as urgently 60,000 years ago, and a species smart enough to nap obsidian into a razor-sharp edge was almost certainly smart enough to notice when its own hair was actively working against its survival. Picture the actual scene now, not the movie version, the archaeological one. Someone crouches near a fire, holding a freshly worked flint blade, its edge honed over the last hour by careful, practiced strikes against a harder stone. A companion sits nearby, using two matched clamshells like a crude but functional set of tweezers, working through a section of hair or beard with patience that would be totally unnecessary if the end goal were simply matted chaos. This isn't a rushed, careless act. It takes time to make a tool this sharp, takes patience to use tweezers made from shells. Both only make sense if the result mattered enough to justify the effort, and clearly, to the people doing it, it did. Then agriculture arrived, and grooming didn't disappear. It became something else entirely. A marker of status rather than a matter of daily maintenance. In ancient Egypt, shaved heads and elaborate wigs made from human or sheepskin hair, sometimes decorated with gold and jewels, became clear signals of wealth and social rank. Ancient Greek men grew hair long and styled it deliberately into braids and topknots, while the Spartan cut short on the sides, longer on top, became a specific, recognizable identity marker. The tools and techniques got more refined as civilizations grew larger, but the underlying instinct, using deliberate effort to shape and control your own hair, was never new. It stretches back tens of thousands of years further than any pyramid, any wig, any barbershop. So the next time that image pops into your head, matted hair, wild beard, someone who's never once thought about grooming in his entire life, remember what the evidence actually says. Somewhere on a cold night 60,000 years ago, a person sat by a fire with a sharpened flint blade and a pair of clamshell tweezers, carefully trimming and shaping their own hair with exactly the same basic instinct you have every time you look in a mirror. You reach for scissors or a razor without a second thought. They reached for volcanic glass and a matched pair of shells. The tools were different. The instinct behind them wasn't.